How Electronic Arts and DICE have treated the Battlefield franchise is kind of sickening. This was at once one of the big juggernauts of the industry, right up there with Call of Duty as the top shooter game. Nowadays, it just feels like a series of mistakes. Battlefield 5 went in a really rocky direction. It eventually found its footing, but way too late. The same story could be said about Battlefield 2042, which doubled down on a bunch of other FPSs and the way that they do things. The identity of Battlefield wasn't there, and they realized that, again, little too late. Now, Electronic Arts is talking about the next Battlefield, Battlefield 6, or whatever it's going to be called, and the EA CEO, Android Wilson, said they've learned valuable lessons. Oh my gosh, I've heard that so many times over the last couple of years, for them to only repeat the mistakes. So the next Battlefield is going to be another tremendous live service, and that wording is really key. They're not talking about tremendous game, tremendous live service, which I imagine Android Wilson looked at the monetization plans, gave a big old thumbs up, and didn't look at anything else in regards to the game. I just am very skeptical with anything DICE does nowadays, especially with the massive departures and really the drop in quality we've seen the last decade with this franchise. But this PC Gamer article goes on to add that this is the largest Battlefield team in franchise history, according to Andrew Wilson, the EA CEO, which will build a Battlefield universe across connected multiplayer and single-player experiences. Wilson says Battlefield 2042 players apparently made it clear that they wanted an even deeper experience. No, they just wanted a Battlefield game, and for some reason 2042 didn't want to give that at the beginning. And that a few weeks ago, I was visiting with the teams, and I couldn't be more excited about what they showed and what we were able to play. Later on the earnings call, Wilson slightly expanded on this with an amusing encapsulation of what they're going for. I've just spent a whole bunch of time with the collective Battlefield team, playing what they're building, and it's going to be another tremendous live service. Only time will tell if they are true with that, but this coming from Andrew Wilson doesn't do much to inspire confidence. And it is worth mentioning that the team at EA DICE, I guess you could say, is continuing to grow, or at least the Battlefield team, as this was a recent report that the Dead Space 2 remake was shelved again, as EA Motive is now prioritizing an Iron Man game and also, again, work on this upcoming Battlefield experience. And there has been some reports debunking that a Dead Space 2 remake was on the way. Per a recent Bloomberg report, EA Motive has moved on to new projects, and the sci-fi horror series is on ice again. The studio reportedly wanted to create a wholly new entry after the remake, but none of those ideas got the green light to move forward, so thus Dead Space 2 never was technically in development, but that's what they wanted to do. But it does appear that the Dead Space remake, which came not too long ago, just didn't do all that well. EA's never been specific on Dead Space 2023's performance, and as sources speaking to IGN were conflicted. At least one said it's done well, while others indicated it missed projections. And I would assume it missed projections based on the fact that they're not continuing with a remake of Dead Space 2, or really, working on their own game. Now, in some other EA-related news, we have Electronic Arts considering in-game advertising, but will take thoughtful approach, which anytime you hear this coming from corporate, not a good sign. EA CEO Andrew Wilson has said in-game advertising could become a meaningful driver of growth. We've seen Take-Two Interactive, especially in 2K games experiences, NBA 2K, they've done this type of stuff, and it's been extremely negatively received. Anytime it really is done, it's poorly done. Wilson did continue on, saying, as we think about the many, many billions of hours spent both playing, creating, watching, and connecting, where much of the engagement happens to be in the bounds of a traditional game experience, our expectation is that advertising has an opportunity to be a meaningful driver of growth for us. We'll be very thoughtful as we move into that, but we have teams internally in the company right now looking at how do we do this, or do very thoughtful implementations inside of our game experiences. If I had to assume, they're probably going to explore this in like NCAA football, Madden, FIFA, franchises that have a normalized audience, a casual audience that is a-okay with crap like this, and their revolt really isn't going to be anything that EA has to worry about. In other news, Activision Blizzard recently settled a pretty significant lawsuit. They settled it for about $23 million. This report coming from Insider Gaming, saying that Electronic Blizzard has been found liable of patent infringement. According to the verdict, Activision infringed on 2 Acceleration Bay patents that related to networking and broadcasting technology. These technologies were then used in various Activision games as multiplayer. The jury came back with a ruling that Activision was liable for $18 $14 million for infringement within World of Warcraft and about $5.5 million for infringement in Call of Duty. Of course, the report goes on to say that Activision has denied wrongdoing and they will appeal the verdict. Now, Nintendo seems to be the only console maker right now not facing some sort of controversy or negative news. Sony and Xbox, Jesus Christ lately. But Nintendo is talking about the future, and Nintendo's president reportedly described its next-gen console as Switch Next Model, which, Switch U, I suppose, maybe that's on the way. Entering into 2024, Suicide Squad was one of the big game releases coming. I can't say most anticipated or anything because there was a ton of skepticism surrounding this game. It looked very Marvel's Avengers-esque, and the trauma that people have from these live services is very real. We all saw the writing on the wall, but I guess Warner Brothers did not, because they pushed forward and the game just ended up being exactly what we all thought. Soulless live service nonsense, terrible reviews, and ultimately a failure. That's what Warner Brothers said in recent weeks, but we have some more in-depth details coming from them, which detail just how much of a disaster this has been for Rocksteady, who spent about 8 to 9 years of development on this. The founders of the studio departed just, I believe, a number of months ago. I really do question if Rocksteady has a future in the industry after this failure, but Warner Brothers, in this article coming from IGN, they say the failure of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League contributed to a $200 million hit to revenue. That is insane. Reporting its Q1 financial results, Warner Brothers Discovery said its games revenue declined significantly as a result of a tough comparison with last year's best-selling video game, Hogwarts Legacy. Decent single-player Harry Potter game that people have been waiting really a couple of decades for, versus live service superhero nonsense that we just saw a couple of years ago with Marvel. I mean, Jesus, I feel like this is just so obvious. But yeah, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League generated significantly lower revenues compared to Hogwarts Legacy, which was a behemoth. And in a follow-up investor focus call, Warner Brothers boss David Zaslav called the release of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League disappointing. And I hope people understand that right now the game has about 130 players on Steam. That is horrific, especially for this being, a DC property. This should not be this bad. And it is worth mentioning that Warner Brothers isn't learning the right lesson. This was just about 2 months ago in which they're doubling down on their commitment to live service games. Hogwarts Legacy 2, probably going to be a live service. So if you're hoping that this failure, $200 million lost in revenue, was going to contribute to them making some proper decisions in the future, especially with their gaming sector, nada. But this finally gets us to the big story of the day, and that is Xbox, which the situation is only worsening. Earlier this year, we saw cuts at Blizzard. That was a massive story. We also heard that Xbox was exploring the idea of putting various games on other platforms such as PlayStation, which got people concerned about, exclusives and if that was going to stay. And there was some uproar, maybe Halo is going to be coming to PlayStation. That seemed to be, deflated, like that's not actually happening. They're just doing things like Sea of Thieves, and that's not a big deal. But now it really is starting to feel like things are shifting, and Xbox right now has a perception problem. As we discussed the other day, various Bethesda studios were shut down, including Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks. Tango Gameworks is a very interesting one. Their only presence in Japan is now gone. It's done. We actually saw the legendary creator Shinji Mikami. He had one word for the Microsoft shuttering, and he just said, Tango Gameworks sad. He only left recently. There had been some rumors, people putting online saying that Tango wasn't the same. He took all of the staff. That has been debunked by various reporters in the industry. So Tango Gameworks, it's really unclear what the thinking was at Xbox, and as we continue through this video, it becomes even more unclear because there's just some blatant hypocrisy coming from piss poor leadership at the top at Xbox. Now, this report coming from Jason Schreier of Bloomberg has detailed some new accounts about what's happening behind the scenes at Xbox. I said this on Twitter, but I assume that this was just the beginning, and it looks like, unfortunately, that's exactly the case. As Jason Schreier reports, the sudden closure of several video game studios at Microsoft, his Xbox division, was the result of a widespread cost-cutting initiative that still isn't finished. As soon as they spent about $100 billion on all of these studios, Activision, Blizzard, Bethesda, Obsidian, and so on and so forth, I knew that pressure was going to be on them to start delivering, and they haven't done that. They really haven't done that in about a decade or so. So now that pressure is there, and we're seeing, well, smaller studios get hurt, which makes people extremely concerned about, Obsidian Entertainment, Ninja Theory. And we'll talk more about Ninja Theory in a few, but this week, Xbox began offering voluntary severance agreements to producers, QA testers, and other staff at ZeniMax. Others across the Xbox organization have been told that more cuts are on the way. I assume that's going to be coming, maybe Xbox Game Studios' way, and maybe even more at Activision Blizzard. Employees were shocked by the unexpected shuttering Tuesday of 3 Xbox subsidiaries and the absorption of a 4th. And it is worth mentioning that Juicehead, a popular Bethesda creator, pointed out that Redfall was actually the Arcane Austin folks. They were working on the DLC 5 hours before they were shut down. Just absolutely brutal stuff here. It does continue from Jason Schreier during a town hall with ZeniMax staff on Wednesday morning. Xbox president Matt Booty, somebody who has just continued to fail upwards. It's ridiculous how this individual has... I don't understand how he just keeps going up with so much failure as he's overseen the Xbox division for about 7 or 8 years now, and there's nothing to show of it, just constant chaos. Matt Booty praised Hi-Fi Rush, but did not specify why the company had shut down the development studio behind it, according to 3 people. Speaking about the closures more broadly, Booty said that the company's studios had been spread too thin like peanut butter on bread, and that leaders across the division had felt understaffed. They decided to close these studios to free up resources elsewhere, he said. I remember years ago, Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and the other Xbox executives talked about their regret with shutting down Lionhead Studios and that they didn't want that to ever happen again, and yet it happened again. And I'm sure they're going to regret that in the future, especially as they want to have a bigger presence in Japan, and this is only going to convince a lot more publishers, developers in that territory to steer away from Xbox, and really that is a worldwide thing that I'm sure is going to be felt, especially with this recent news. Booty added that the shutdown of subsidiary Arcane Austin was not connected to the performance of its new multiplayer game Redfall, a critical and commercial flop, which Xbox did say they were sticking with Redfall. They wanted to have a comeback, and I never believed it was going to happen, but I also just feel like Xbox really needed to step in earlier on with that project, and they said as much, but I feel like Arcane Austin was done dirty. Redfall was a game that they didn't want to make. They were forced to, and it's just unfortunate that they're not going to continue, because Prey is one of my favorite games of all time, and it seems like we're never going to get Prey 2. And maybe that was always going to be the case because Prey never sold all that well, but it's disappointing that they're not going to get that opportunity. Before its closure, Arcane had been looking to return to its roots, pitching a new single-player immersive sim game, such as a new entry in the Dishonored series, according to people familiar. And it is worth mentioning that a lot of game developers, such as Larian, experienced failure along the way, and they eventually found their footing. And I feel like that could have been the same with Arcane Austin, but again, just never going to get that opportunity. And yes, I understand that 70% of the studio was gone, but even there in their current form, I'm sure that they could have done some amazing things, much better than what Redfall was. Jill Braff, head of ZeniMax Studios, said in the town hall that she hoped the reorganization would allow the division, which also develops Fallout and Doom, to put more focus on fewer projects. It's harder to support 9 studios all across the world with a lean central team with an ever-growing plate of things to do. I think we were about to topple over, which is an insane thing to say, because they were able to manage all of this for a decade or so. Tango joined, I think, Bethesda about 8 or 9, 10 years ago. Things were working fine until, well, the Xbox move. Both Tango and Arcane released games last year. Were looking to hire additional staff as they pitch new projects, which Booty and Braff suggested was the main factor behind their closures. Mikami, Tango's founder and studio head, departed last year. The massive Activision Blizzard acquisition has ramped up scrutiny of the Xbox division from leaders at Microsoft, according to people familiar. And again, as soon as they took that $70 billion purchase, that pressure was on for them to start delivering immediately, and that hasn't happened. But Game Pass has not seen the massive growth that Xbox boss Phil Spencer may have been hoping for. Matt Piscatella, executive director of analysis from Circana, said that monthly non-mobile video game subscription spending in the US has been flat to low single-digit growth. This is what Xbox has been putting all their money in, having Game Pass be the next big thing, the Netflix of gaming, and it looks like it's just not doing anything, or it's not printing the results that they hoped for. And our data Game Pass spending really had its big growth period in late 2019 through early 2021 and has since settled. Purchasing games and add-on content as well as free-to-play models are still the vastly preferred method of getting to video games by US consumers, at least for now. And I do think that Xbox's big problem is that they just have not had exclusives that people care about. Starfield was really the only one in the last number of years, and even then that has proven to be divisive. And then you look at the competitor, like with Nintendo and PlayStation just constantly delivering. And I do think Game Pass can be a lot better and get a lot more subscriptions, but Xbox needs to, actually have some proper leadership and accountability. It's just not happening, and it hasn't happened in well over a decade. Now, it is worth mentioning there has been some other news as of late, such as Redfall. This is just another disappointing detail, was that they were reportedly set to receive a big offline play update this month before Arcane Austin was shut down. This is some of the content that they were working on, and I get Redfall was terrible. It was terrible, but I think something like this would have been great to see, especially I'm sure the modding community could have gone crazy with it, but it doesn't seem like this will ever happen. Now, we do have another report coming from The Verge, which details, again, more stuff on the Xbox disaster. That's the best way to call it right now. Another insider account inside Microsoft's Xbox turmoil, and there was one big detail about this article that I wanted to point out. It's that Microsoft has had internal debates about whether to put new releases of Call of Duty into Game Pass, and right now I just feel like they're not going to do that. And I do find it funny because before the whole merger, this was like the main thing that everybody was getting excited about. Oh my God, Call of Duty is going to be on Game Pass day one. And now it's like, the Xbox brand's on fire, and it doesn't seem, well, they need money. That's pretty much it. The subscriptions to Game Pass aren't doing it. It's not growing enough. And then The Verge also notes that they were told that Microsoft is again considering increasing the price of Game Pass Ultimate, which to me is just, I'm just going to unsubscribe at this point. There's no value with this right now. Very few games are being delivered, and the ones that actually are coming out just they're not worth it in my opinion. I mean, if you look at all of the Xbox exclusives on the way, so many of them are embroiled in chaos. Everwild, where the hell is it? Avowed, we'll see what happens once we get to see some new gameplay in about a month or so. Now, another report coming from The Verge, this was another just devastating one, that Microsoft says it needs games like Hi-Fi Rush the day after killing its studio. And the individual who said this, of course, is the guy that runs the Xbox division. Matt Booty, head of Xbox Game Studios, held a town hall to discuss the division's future goals. We need smaller games that give us prestige and awards, Booty told employees, according to internal remarks shared with The Verge. Which, the game right here that did exactly that, and they were working on a sequel, or they were exploring the idea of a Hi-Fi Rush 2, and they're never going to be able to do that. The hypocrisy is absolutely insane. And speaking to the chaos within Xbox and really the lack of leadership and just the failure within the company, if you didn't know, Hellblade 2 is releasing in 2 weeks. This was news to me because there has been absolutely no marketing, and social media blew up when this revelation was made. It was like, wait, Hellblade 2 is coming out in just a couple of days, and we had people doing this. Xbox fans urging people to buy Hellblade 2 after Tango and Arcane closures. This doesn't mean anything. If Xbox is going to shut down Ninja Theory, they're going to do it, and that's the concern right now. Because Hellblade 2, I'm telling you, that lack of marketing is really going to hurt, and I am very skeptical that this game is going to deliver. It feels weird because we've been seeing this game so many times, like over the last 5 years, and it just doesn't feel like there's any anticipation at all for it. We did see Aaron Greenberg, which is a Xbox vice president in charge of their marketing. This was like an indirect response to the no marketing for Hellblade, saying that they were starting just the other day. 2 weeks before launch feels a little late, but we'll see what happens. Right now, I'm just extremely skeptical on that. And in terms of Xbox chaos, it just continues. Perfect Dark, another Xbox exclusive on the way. This was about a year ago. We got this revelation that the Perfect Dark reboot had reportedly made little meaningful progress since its reveal, which was a CGI trailer, because that's what Xbox has shown with like all of their games the last couple of years. And apparently it was still in pre-production 2 to 3 years years from release. That was last year. The latest update we got was from Jeff Grubb, and again, it is just more bad news. It's in very, very rough state, and other reporters back this up. Jeff Grubb saying the fallout from this is, I've been hearing from more and more that Perfect Dark is in a rough state. Sounds like it's in a very rough state. It doesn't sound like it's really coming together in a way. And then VG247 journalist Alex Donaldson echoed this, describing it as a team really trying to push a boulder up a steep hill. Video game historian Liam Robertson saying, from what little I have heard about the development of the new Perfect Dark, it sounds like a future video in the making, just a big protracted mess. And that is the best way to describe Xbox. We'll have a lot more to discuss in the coming days as this is a developing situation, and there have been a lot of reactions. I want to put it into a separate video, but right now Xbox has a major perception problem. Phil Spencer and his executive team, they cannot escape this anymore. There has been no results. I mean, that is the big thing. You have to create, you have to have results. You buy up all of these studios, and what we've seen is just developers losing their jobs and studios now no longer existing. And it really is a disappointing road we are on right now with Xbox, but they deserve all the scrutiny that they are getting because this is a failure of leadership and there has been no accountability. People like Matt Booty, I don't know how they have their job. And even Phil Spencer, he talked years ago about if the Halo brand, falls, the Xbox brand falls. And we saw that with Halo Infinite. Obviously, it's gotten better over time. But again, it was another story of too little too late. So I don't know where Xbox goes from here. It just feels like every couple of days and weeks we get more sad updates, and this is an example of it. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on the other stories we discussed today down in the comment section below, and of course what's going on with Xbox. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or if you found any informative value, and consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.